All right, we are live, and then let's make sure this streams back to our event. Hi, everyone. We're so excited you're here today. We're gonna have a fun time here with Sherry. And Sherry, where are you tuning in from today?
So I'm located in Chevy Chase, Maryland, which is right next to Washington, D.C.
Really? I didn't realize you're actually even over there.
That's where I've been for about 20 years now.
Wow. Where'd you grow up then?
I'm a Midwesterner at heart, which I know you can appreciate.
Yes.
I'm originally from Northeast Ohio, Akron, Ohio, the rubber capital of the world, but I left there when I was 17 to go to college in the South at Duke and law school back in the Midwest, and then I headed to this area.
Oh, nice. I love it. Sorry, I'm just making sure we're going in the group here. This is
perfect.
Having a day.
Some days are like that too.
I know, it's one of those Mondays, but what are you going to do? I'm so excited for this topic today because this is something, I've never actually really talked about with anyone. I mean, I've done therapy, but I didn't really focus on this personally. And it should just be interesting. I'm excited because it's something I don't know about, but it's so needed. And I think something we also don't talk enough about since we've never talked about it.
So true. And I think a lot of us, especially as women, are a little bit afraid to talk about it because we may have been told that it isn't polite to do so. So I think it's one of the most empowering things we can do as women. And really, this is about money and so much else, right? If we feel empowered to talk about uncomfortable things, it really can spread to many areas of our lives.
I feel that. Yeah. I mean, they're uncomfortable. You don't want to talk about them. So let's just not.
Exactly.
So you just want to thank everyone for joining Purse Strings today on our Money Monday. Purse Strings is always here to offer free financial education for women so they can feel confident and competent when making financial decisions. But then, it's always who can I go to, who can I trust? And you have all your Purse Strings approved providers there for you. You out with whatever you need in the financial realm. We got realtors, mortgage brokers, we have divorce coaches, as we have on Sherry today, and everybody who you need, because we're all about having a financial team. You need more than just an attorney or just a coach at the table. You need a lot of different people to help you out. So it's about making your financial team and using those Purse Strings approved providers to build that. So we're so excited to be here. We love being here on our Mondays. We'll wait a couple more minutes for some people to jump on since I had some technical issues. But if anyone else has talked about these topics before or have any questions for Sherry, you can pop them in at any point. We always love answering questions as well. So let me find your little intro. What'd you do over the weekend? Anything fun?
Next week is packed, so it was actually great to have a relaxing weekend. We had beautiful weather here, so just getting out to hike a bit, doing some outdoor stuff was really perfect in the nation's capital.
I love that. So yeah, today we have Sherry, and let me give you a little introduction. Sherry is the founder and owner of Dear Divorce Coach. As you navigate separation and divorce and other life transitions, she offers coaching support that includes creating a plan to align with your actions, with values, practical navigation of legal, therapeutic, and financial steps. And she helps with mindset coaching to accomplish all of this. You are a lawyer by training, and now you're a coach. So you have your analytical abilities, for your needs for separation and divorce to help you communicate in this neutral way with your former spouse or co-parenting. And so we're so excited to learn about this kind of neutral conversation that you bring to the table today. So with that, anyone can ask questions throughout. I'll give you the floor and we can get going.
Thank you so much, Maggie. First of all, it's my pleasure to be here today. And really, what we're talking about is the ability to have uncomfortable conversations in almost any area. And money is really one of these top areas, isn't it? So, we want to know, how do we transform our relationship with money? And we're going to talk about some top tips to communicate more easily about it. And one of the ways we do that is first by bringing ourselves to a place of seeing possibility. So you must know, you must have experienced, I'm sure all of you have, that when you're upset or confused, it's hard to see possibilities. You're caught up in the emotion, you're escalated. So before you make any decision about a situation that upsets you involving money, first we're going to take time to pause. And I want to emphasize, this may be the most important step you can take. De-escalate the moment for you. By taking time to calm yourself down, you are likely to have a better perspective on the situation and be more prepared to proceed in a manner in line with your core values, who you really are, rather than using escalated emotion or old ideas that you may have carried with you since childhood, really. So, we're going to start today with a simple mindfulness practice to follow when you're escalated. It may not look like this as we all re-enter the office zone, but what we're going to reach for is some Zen. So how does it look? First, you are in charge of yourself, nobody else. So try to calm yourself first. Notice, how are you breathing? Is your breath moving quickly? If so, pay attention to it. Focus on just slowing down your breath. That's all I want you to do. Try it now. How do you feel when you're able to notice just your breath? If you're having a hard time just focusing on your breath, I want you now to add a quick body scan and pay attention. Is your head pounding? Are your palms sweaty? As you notice what's going on for you in your body, attend briefly to each symptom and remind yourself literally of how you want to feel. Notice any shift, however subtle, in your physical body, and notice especially how it aligns with your mental state. So you're going to repeat this practice whenever you find yourself in an escalated situation until you have slowed the breath and have recovered from the physical symptoms of escalation. And then I don't want you to visit or revisit these topics of escalation until you're physically calmer. It doesn't mean you're going to be perfectly calm, let me be clear. A little bit of stress can be a good thing to keep us motivated, keep us engaged, but it will help. So as we start to calm the physical body, we will start to notice what happens to the mental space. Now, if you are more physically relaxed, you may now turn your attention to what brought you the physical escalation, and we're going to focus on the issue at hand. So it's really important now to make sure you have time and space to concentrate on what really happened. Try not to multitask, which so many of us, especially as women, do, or attend to more than just this important issue. If we're talking about money, what do we really need to do? What do we really need to focus on? So bring all of your attention to what's really in front of you. Even if you only have a few minutes to do it, do that. So now we've calmed the physical body and we're going to focus on just this issue. Notice in the picture, the couple, the way they're looking at each other, they're engaged. They're attending to each other and the issue. That's really what focus is. Now you're focused. You're de-escalated a bit. You're focused. You're going to consider the possibilities. If you can, if it's possible in this moment, write down what has occurred from your perspective and list the possible responses. So after this engagement, I want to help you remember what it is you talked about, what it is about money that you were working through and working on. Write it down. And then I want you to set it aside. So you've created an agenda of sorts. You know what the focus was supposed to be. You've de-escalated yourself. You've focused. And now you're going to consider the possibilities. You're looking at what's happened. After you've taken the time to do that, it's really important to get some feedback. This is where the professionals come in. Whether you're consulting a professional coach or speak to a trusted advisor, it's really important to get that reality check before you ask. You act on whatever information you've gotten. So as we all know, sometimes when dealing with conflict or uncertainty about money, our physical and emotional responses trick us into thinking we're justified in extreme response. That's rarely the case. So instead, after you've thought about what might work, ask someone that you trust, and not just someone who's likely to agree with you. Ask for them to weigh in. If you need expertise, what do these numbers really mean? What does this look like for me? I don't understand this. How can you help me understand this? So also consider asking that person to play devil's advocate so that you can get another perspective. You can hear what doesn't make sense. And sometimes you can sit down with a professional who can hear your perspective and the other person's too. That can be really helpful to act as a facilitator of the different perspectives. And by creating this safe space for neutral communication, you're creating a more likely scenario for success. What I notice it's really hard, and oftentimes really hard for women to do, and my clients, for me, is to really stand up even when we are right with our beliefs. So if we have calmed ourselves down, if we're willing to get feedback, if we make sure we understand what we're talking about, we're more likely to internalize what's next. So this getting feedback is a really important part of the process. So now, it may not feel like everything's calm and settled. You might be ready to go out and have a good time with friends, but at least you're making some progress. And that's really important because now you have different perspectives. And maybe you're now ready to do something else that's really important in that process. It's time to create some closure. If you're fortunate enough to resolve the conflict, allow yourself the opportunity to create a reset for future interactions. So whether this is someone difficult in your life, you're in a business negotiation, in a personal negotiation, you want to have an opportunity to work through this and move forward. So you've likely learned something in this process about yourself and the other person in managing this. So trust yourself enough to apply it in the future as well. Not every tool you use this time can you use next time, but what's clear is you know how to de-escalate and reset for yourself. So pay attention for yourself. What's likely to trigger a negative response? If it's around money, if someone says, well, you've never managed money well, so you don't know anything, and that really escalates you. Or you don't know anything about taking care of money, you just spend it. That could be a trigger for you. But notice it's a trigger. It doesn't mean it's true. And by understanding more, you're going to be prepared to have a response to that has nothing to do with emotion, but substance. In addition, be sensitive to other people's triggers and recognize their limitations too. Also. So what this really takes, and I think these rocks really set up this scenario visually very well, is an interdependence. You notice how these rocks are balanced just so. It takes just the right set of circumstances to have them all really fit together and stay in this arch. It's not going to be that way forever. Oftentimes when we have conflict or escalation with people, and so much of it can be around money, we notice that this moment of understanding can feel quite tenuous. But when all the factors come together, it can happen. And the best thing we can do is be prepared for this moment by having an understanding of our money. So what we first have to do to create this interdependence, going back to what we talked about, is understanding. Get confident and competent with the substance of what you need to discuss. Don't let someone else define who you are when it comes to money or anything else that's hard to talk about. You get to decide how you feel about it, how you behave around it, and what your future looks like. So what lessons can we learn from this? In my own professional experience, we all bring our fears, our biases to the conflicts in which we engage around money. However, when we align our core value with our actions, we're less likely to have a hair trigger response when someone challenges or upsets our worldview. In other words, if we believe in our competence and we can have confidence, no one can unsettle that. It's up to us to hold that space. So how do we get there? We calm down, we show up. This helps us solve not only one conflict, but it creates a mindset and framework for any future dilemmas. It's not easy. It's pretty simple, right? But it's not easy. It does take education. It takes us being willing to show up and gain competence in topics we may have believed we weren't good at before. You can do this. All of my women clients can do it and do it well. And we're not going to respond perfectly every time, but guess what? You can do a little bit better every single time one of these trigger issues come up around money. And that's all we're asking you to do. No one asks everybody to be perfect. We're just asking you to do the best you can for yourself in your life. And it's really important that you know how to do that for you. What I really love is to give everybody at the end a quick primer. And I think these 3 key tips really summarize what we've talked about today. First is grant me the serenity to accept the people I cannot change. And guess what? That's everybody else. We can only change us. We'll never change someone else's view of us. They may always say we aren't good with money, or that we don't understand it, or that we're not entitled to it. But guess what? They don't get to decide that for us. We do. So we have to understand that we'll never change someone else's worldview, but we can change our view of ourselves. So we ask for the serenity to accept the people we cannot change, everybody else. Grant me the courage to change the one I can, that's me, which requires education, time, patience with ourselves. And grant me the wisdom to know that that is me. So remembering this, so much of how you behave and respond around money is up to you, which is a really empowering message, by the way, because if it's in our control, it means we can align our values, we can learn from what we've done previously, we can educate ourselves, and we can show up in a de-escalated way. You don't have to know everything. You just need to know the questions you need to ask, rely on professionals that can support you in the process, and keep on going. So that's the real message here. So whether you are contemplating in the midst of separation and divorce, whether you have an intractable family conflict, something else that's not working around money in your life, there are tools that can help. And I have 2 places that you can look to do that. One is Dear Divorce Coach, which specifically supports people, as Maggie described, in separation and divorce, helps them go neutral for success. And also Recompose Us, which is a broader array of conflict resolution, whether you have conflict with an adult child, whether you are contemplating separation and divorce, any kind of conflict you may have in your life with a neighbor, with a business colleague, we are here to help you in that space. And we do this all day long by facilitating conversations, by getting you referrals to resources that can help you manage better every single day and de-escalate the conflict that's not working. So that's what we do, Maggie. And that's how, in my experience, these tools can help people do better for themselves around money.
Wow, Sherry, that was fantastic. I think there are so many great things to take away from there. I mean, the first one I took some notes, and the first one I kind of wanted to touch on was the focus. And I think that's so hard sometimes to take the time out of anything. I mean, no matter if it's even conflict or just any time in our day to focus on what we're doing. Thousands of tabs, our phones open, people have kids running around. I know kids are kind of back in school, but school's over, so they're home now. Yeah. It's hard to get that quiet time where you're like, this is really what I'm trying to concentrate on, especially to have time, and have that conversation, with whoever you're trying to have it with.
And so my tip around that, because that's such a good point, Maggie, is you have to be very intentional. I know in my own life, there are times when I also use that as an excuse not to focus on something, right? So
100%.
if you already have an emotional resistance, then you might add a layer of practical resistance. So it's really up to us as adult women to figure out that space, whether it means getting a babysitter for a couple of hours, asking your family to help, whatever it takes to create that space. We owe it to ourselves to do it.
Exactly. And then, the next point that you were touching on, you were writing it down and everything, but then the confidence and competence, about that topic, becoming a little bit more educated about that topic. And from that and having, focusing and realizing like a lot of this is realizing that you want to do better yourself and you want to improve on yourself. It's not just getting rid of the conflict, but it's empowering yourself and feeling confident in yourself in these conversations as well, which is sometimes hard for women to do, but also amazing when you start feeling it.
Oh, Maggie, I'm so glad you said that. And I think one of the really important points here is that I think as women, sometimes we can feel like everybody else has it all figured out, but somehow we miss this piece, right? Mm-hmm. And even if that's true, even if we don't know, there are supports to help us with that. Now, look, you have an MBA, but everyone may not be as financially savvy as you. But there are people like you and at Purse Strings who can help with that. And there is no dumb question. That's one thing that experience has taught me. If you don't understand it, there's somebody else who doesn't understand it. Ask the question. And so we do have a responsibility to say, if you never learned in school, how do I balance my account? How do I understand what that investment looks like, what the return on my money is? How do I know what I'm entitled to if we're dividing money? Mm-hmm. You are not only allowed to ask that question, but you should. But we all do have a responsibility to not just show up and ask the question, but educate ourselves about what we need to know. Otherwise, if we look back, we may say, gosh, I really wish I had known. And it's hard to show up. It's hard sometimes because, as you know, a lot of the messages, especially about money, are set in childhood. And if our parents never talked about it, for instance, with us, or they made it clear it wasn't polite to talk about money, then we may just feel like we can't talk about it and that we miss those lessons. And there's somebody else, the all-knowing others, who know about this stuff and that we can never know. But really, it's just a matter of asking questions. And if you don't know the right questions to ask, say that, because somebody has got the answer for you.
So much as, you don't know what you need to know, which is when you dive into some of these finance things, even I'm learning. That's why we talk to our professionals. I was like, what do these people need to know? Because you're the professional. But we talk to so many women who, they grow up and mom and dad would always fight about money. So we just learn not to talk about it because we don't want to start a fight. And so maybe whomever you're with wouldn't start that fight, but you're just used to that rigmarole or whatever it is, which is hard to break, but also understandable why you would feel that way. It's really just having compassion with yourself and growing beyond that.
And one of the things I like to say, and, obviously that was a pretty quick primer on how to de-escalate conflict. But one of the things is if you're talking to someone with whom you may have a difficult conversation, you don't have to have it all at once. You can explore. So you can kind of dip a toe in the water, as they say, and hey, is there a good time to talk about this? And if the person says, no, I never want to talk about it, you can say, you know what, that's not going to work. But what if you think about it for a day and get back to me? Mm-hmm. So for all of us, taking a little step at a time, but persisting, I think, is the critical piece. And reminding ourselves, as you articulated so well, what may have happened, in our childhood home, what makes us resistant to particular conversations. And, whatever those messages were, you have to learn to undo that systemic messaging, right? Mm-hmm. So as adults, I feel like we all have a responsibility to do that. It may be simple, as I said, well, I shouldn't feel this way, but it's not easy. So I do recommend sometimes that people even see a therapist around money. What was the messaging? Because as a coach all day long, I can tell you the 5 things that you need to do, and you may do them, right, to some extent, but I want you also to believe it. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that believing it piece, if it's really, systemic, takes some therapeutic work to get to the root cause, and then you can release it and let it go.
Definitely. And it feels much better when you do let it go.
Isn't that the truth?
So, I mean, that's always a win too. And so, Sherry, if someone were to call you and use your services, is this, a session that we need to be in person, both me and your plus one, or what's your process kind of like?
Well, thanks for asking. So I do it lots of different ways. I have clients all over the country, in fact, some in Europe as well. We work virtually. I work virtually everywhere. If I am ever traveling to your area, however, you can count on meeting me because I love to meet my clients in person. That's not a threat, by the way. That's
a promise.
That's right. But I can either meet with an individual, as you suggested, or a couple. And a couple doesn't necessarily mean intimate partners. It can be co-parents. It can be people who have a conflict that are adult siblings, or a parent-child adult and an adult parent and their child, right? Both of them adults. What I want to do is work either with you as an individual, figure out what's going on. So our first hour is always spent just processing, getting your background, getting your needs known. And then after that first hour, if we meet in person or via Zoom virtually, we're going to work incrementally. We're going to figure out a plan for success. Sometimes it means we're actually going to involve that other person. Boy, I hope so. But sometimes we can't. Because remember, going back to that PowerPoint, who can we control? Only ourselves.
Right.
Sometimes that other person isn't interested in engaging, but we still deserve peace. We still deserve to figure out how to resolve the conflict, even if it's only with ourselves.
Right.
So my greatest goal is to have both or many people involved in the conflict. If it's a whole family system, for example, that can be ideal, to have everybody's perspective, to have them all in facilitated conversation with me. But really, the best we can do is get the client and then everyone else who's interested involved. And what I love to do, although I love talking to my clients and getting to know you, I don't want to be with you forever, I promise. I want you to be able to go out and do this yourself. So one of the most impactful tools that I try to teach is how to neutralize communication. You'd be surprised, Maggie, or maybe you wouldn't, how much it makes a difference when people go neutral. So, for example, when someone says, hey, I want to understand why the checking account looks this way this month, rather than you always mess up the checking account, it's a mess again, I need to know why, right? You can see the difference in those two statements, and we each have a responsibility. And sometimes when we're, again, escalated, we tend to have that kind of, response to someone. But if we can calm down, get everyone in the system to start talking neutrally, it really helps. The addendum is, of course, we can't control anybody else. So even when that other person is still, shooting arrows at you, I tell you to go neutral, because guess what? They get less interested in targeting you if they can't get a response. It's like siblings, right? My kids do it all the time. So if we can get one person to calm down, the other person's like, she's not that interesting to pick on because she's not giving me the response I want. So even when we don't have everybody involved in the conflict, the goal is to calm down the people, the person we have there. And I think what people find from this kind of coaching, whether it's a life transition like divorce, whether, it's an adult sibling conflict, it's how you show up for yourself that matters. That's really how we find peace in conflict.
I feel like that's really the message I'm getting. Because you can only, like you said, you can only control yourself. You can only change yourself. You can only have confidence in yourself and your abilities. So it's a lot about just empowering you and having you wanting to grow from the situation, no matter if the other person is choosing to grow with you or not on that one.
It's really true. And I guess from, my perspective, I think the people who get to me, I'm awfully encouraged, obviously have an awareness and want to take that step. But sometimes the biggest resistance comes when they feel like other people aren't changing around them. And you look at our world today, it's the same thing, right? We can see things so clearly, and maybe other people don't share our perspective. But I'm absolutely convinced after doing this work for as long as I have, that it's really about how we find peace in ourselves. And the way we do that is creating the right energy in our interaction with other people, right? And de-escalating the engagements we have, advocating, of course, for what we think is right. But if we can learn to take care of ourselves and regulate our own emotions, it goes a long way to solving these problems.
I agree. This has been great. I think you've really, opened up a conversation that we don't have enough, gave some great insight for tips. You can use this in money, you can use this in relationships, you can use this just with yourself sometimes when you're having internal conversations.
True, Maggie, you're so right.
I was doing that trying to work out this morning, so I was like, come on.
There are 1,000 reasons not to, right?
Oh, just laying in bed is a perfect one, but did it.
Yay, Maggie. And viewing these as little wins, right? These are little wins. And reminding yourself it doesn't all have to be perfect, but taking one step that's positive does make a difference for all of us. And I think it motivates us then, because after you did exercise, you felt better, right? And it made everything else possible today. And I'm excited to put on those great earrings, which I love, by the way. They're really
thank you. I love my hoops. This has been wonderful. Thank you, Sherry, for coming on today. Please, everyone, contact Sherry if you're in need of these services. She's here at Dear Divorce Coach, Sherry at deardivorcecoach.com. And she's one of our Purse Strings approved providers. So you can check her out on the Purse Strings website, pursestrings.co. And then we'll have an overview of this presentation as a handout tomorrow with Sherry's contact information as well. So if you have any questions or anything, don't hesitate to reach out to her. So thank you again, Sherry. It was great having you on today.
Thanks, Maggie. Have a great day. Take care, everyone.